Okay guys, welcome to another video. This time around we're gonna cover another subject in Blender. Initially I thought I will only create the very fundamental videos where you take a default object in Blender like a cube, and I wanted to show how to export and import it into Decentraland. And then I added another video that showed you how to add a collider to make these objects unpenetrable and solid once imported into Decentraland. And now I feel like we can maybe even go one step further and design a more complex object like a table, basically a tabletop with 4 legs. This is still very fundamental and very unsophisticated, but it will allow us to look at some, at a few very basic operations inside Blender, and it also will give me a nice stage to show you how to use the Builder tool inside Blender in order to import that object and actually position it inside a scene without programming, without SDK, just with the current version of the builder. So let's just get started on this and see. I think it's going to resonate with some of you. Others might prefer more sophisticated, more complex tutorials or tutorial series by Blender YouTubers. But I think for some people, it just will be helpful to go very slowly through a very basic exercise that will take you just one tiny step down that road towards becoming an expert in Blender. So to get started, as usual, we're clicking on File, New, General to open up a new workspace like that. I will select with my mouse the camera tool here and just delete it with the delete button. The same thing for the light tool. I select it with the mouse and I delete it with the delete button. And I'm just now left with the default cube. In order to look around the cube, if I press the wheel on my mouse, if I press it down and move the mouse, I can rotate around my object in the center of the document, which is represented by this cross. So that's pretty straightforward. In one of the last videos, we took that object and then exported it as a GLB file, and then we used that GLB file to import it into Decentraland. And we're going to do the exact same thing today, but first we will shape this object into a table. And in order to do that, I would like to start with the tabletop. And the tabletop does not look like a cube like that. It's actually flat and a lot wider. And yeah, in order to do so, we need to flatten that cube significantly and make it a lot thinner. And in order to do that, I'm clicking on the actual cube. Please note, I'm currently in the object mode here on the top left. What you need to know is that the object mode is important for you and the edit mode for now. These two modes are the ones that you are going to use in the beginning. Everything else, just leave it aside for now. Remember, object mode, edit mode. Sometimes I confuse those and I have to check which options are available in the edit mode and in the object mode. Is something to get used to, but just be aware that there is always a bit of a issue in the beginning when you're starting out to distinguish those two modes and to make sure that you are in the right mode for the right functionality. But for the time being, we are fine in the object mode because we are working at the size of the whole cube and not on individual faces of the cube, not on the individual edges or corners of the cube. So for now, we're dealing with the whole object. That means we can stay in object mode. And in order to scale the size of that cube, try pressing the S button on your keyboard and don't move the mouse at this point in time. When you have selected the cube for scaling, you will see that the dotted line over there, which indicates that we can now start moving the mouse to scale it. The thing is, if we just start moving the mouse now, we will scale the cube across all of the dimensions, across all of these lines. The green line that goes from left to right and the red line that goes from the bottom to the top on the screen. We don't want to have that type of scaling. We want to only scale along the green line, make this object wider as a second step. And as a first step, as we said, we want to make this cube flatter to resemble a tabletop. Now the thing is, At the beginning, you will not know which axis is represented by which letter on the keyboard. Is it Z? Is it Y? Is it X? But you can just give it a try. I'm pressing the letter Z right now on the keyboard, and it will highlight that green line that goes from left to the right. That means if we would move the mouse now, we will scale in that direction. We don't want that. So I'm pressing the X button. Oh, it's wrong again. It would scale it from the, it will make it longer. We don't want that just yet. So I'm pressing the Y-axis button, and here we go. We want to reduce the height of that cube. So we want to scale it down along that blue axis there, which is represented by the letter Y on my keyboard. And now I will move the mouse towards the center of the cube to reduce it in size. Now the thing is, it's kind of difficult to see when to stop scaling right now. And that's because we have that strange perspective from the, from the side, and slightly elevated position. So I'm not sure when to release and click on the left mouse button. It's just an estimation. So in order to solve that problem, I will press escape to go one step back into the original cube size. And what I will have to do is to look out for the numbers pad on the keyboard where I have the buttons 1 through 9. They are on the right side of the keyboard usually. Now, if I click there on the button 1, it will switch to a different perspective, as you have noticed, where we have a much better view of the cube. If you click on 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth, you will have different views. And I think, and I will have to quickly check if that is true, I think the button 3 will give me the perspective I want. And now let's do the thing we did just before. Let's try scaling that cube into a tabletop. I will press the letter S on the keyboard, and then again the letter Y for the Y-axis. And now I move the mouse towards the center, and now I can clearly see how thick that tabletop will actually be. And I think I will make it, something like that. This is something you will have to experiment with and get a little bit of a feeling for. Sometimes you will have to import the object into Decentraland and see how it looks and then adjust accordingly. But let's just leave it at this level here like that. I'm clicking the left mouse button to release. I'm clicking the central wheel on the mouse to change the view and to check if it looks right. It does look right. And now I want to reselect the object because I'm not done shaping it. I still want it to be a lot wider and actually a little bit longer here to be more like a tabletop. Again, letter S to select scaling. And now let's check which axis I want. I want to actually find the green line. It is the Z button to select the green line. Move the mouse. Yeah, I think this is gonna be something like that. And now again, S button. Let's select the red line. Turns out to be letter X that selects the red line. Move the mouse. Perfect. I think this is about the size that I want this tabletop to be. Left mouse button to release. And this is looking good. This is looking good. We have a solid tabletop. What's missing now are the actual legs of this tabletop. I would have to have 4 legs here at the bottom. And in order to create those, I will turn this tabletop around by clicking the central mouse wheel and by moving the mouse. And what I will do here, and this is a new functionality that we will introduce now. I select the tabletop. If you click, I believe Control R. R for Republic, Control R. Or is it Shift R? No, let's go one step back. So as you can see, I'm in a situation that I told you about before. I'm clicking Control R, and what I'm looking for is not happening. And this is usually a sign that I am not in the right mode. I'm in the object mode, and actually I want to work on on the individual faces, not only on the whole object. So I have to change to the edit mode. Once I've done that, if I click Control R again, and if I move after that, if I move the mouse over the tabletop in specific areas, it will show me these lines here. And these lines will actually allow me to cut these surfaces along those lines, creating an additional surface. So now we have one tabletop surface here, and we want to have, I would say 1, 2, 3, 4. We want to have 5, 6, 7, 8, about 9 different surfaces in order to position the legs. And it doesn't maybe make sense to you now, but let me show you and try to follow me. And we will see that this is exactly what we need to do to get those legs in place. So all right, I'm still having the ability now to select where to make the cut, but there is one little thing that I would like to change with this selection, is that I would like to have 2 cuts at the same time and not only one. So basically I want to have more than one line, and in order to do so I need to use the scroll wheel on the mouse to create 2 lines out of one. So let's quickly recap. You change to the edit mode. When the object is selected, you press Ctrl R and you move the mouse around until you see one line, and then you use the scroll wheel to multiply the lines to 2. And once that is done, we are not quite done yet. And this is where there is some level of complexity and some level of getting used to, because we do have 2 additional lines, but we want to move these lines a little bit further out towards the edges on the left and the right at the same time. You could do this whole thing with 1 cut manually, but you would have to use your personal judgment if those 2 lines are placed with an equal distance from the edge on both sides. So I'm just using 2 lines to not have to worry about that. But in order to move these lines now a little bit further apart, I have to click on the S button, the same S button we used for scaling. And after clicking that, I will use the central mouse wheel on the mouse again. And as you can see, I'm not getting the effect that I wanted. What is the issue here? Well, let me quickly go through the process again. Control R. Duplicate the line by using the scroll wheel. Clicking the scale button. I think I forgot to select the axis along which I want to move those lines further apart. That would be the green line. I think it's the X. It's not that. So something is not working. That's interesting. Have I forgotten something here? This used to work just fine. Aha. I imagine we first have to confirm that by clicking the left mouse button. And now my cursor changes, as you can see on the screen, into these 2 arrows. And if I click S now, I'm scaling, but not in the way that I wanted. So we are close. We are close to getting it right, but something didn't quite work. So this is a typical example which you are all likely to face when you're starting out with Blender. You mess something up, you have to go back to undo to get back to the initial stage and try again. So let's do this again. Control R. Select, don't click anything, but make the line visible. Use the mouse wheel to, bam, click. Now they're confirmed. If I move the mouse now, I can move that object towards here or towards here, but I actually want to have around that distance from the side on both sides. So how do I do that? If I click on the S button for scaling, this was my initial thought on how I'm going to do this. This didn't work. So it's the Z button. I had to actually try the Y, the X, and then once I've selected the Z button, it allows me to scale across the green line again. So this is exactly the troubleshooting that you will have to get through when you're starting out. And it takes a little bit of practice in the beginning to have the confidence to troubleshoot that and not to lose your nerves. But eventually you will overcome that. I'm starting to overcome these issues now. So let's do this again. Let's quickly go back, undo. Hopefully this is useful to you to go through all of these little failures and everything that can actually happen. Let's do this again. So we are in the edit mode. We press Control R. We see the line, we don't click anything. We use the mouse wheel to create two lines. Now we click and confirm. The lines have changed the colors. Now we click on S on the keyboard, S for school. And now before moving the mouse, we have to select one of the axes along with which one to scale or move these lines apart. And we have learned in the past experiment that it's the letter Z, the green line here. And now, after having pressed Z, if I move the mouse, I can position these lines just about here. And this is the width of the legs of the table which I'm trying to create. So maybe I'll do them a little bit bigger, something like this, maybe even bigger. And then I confirm with a mouse click, boom, and we are done. We have created these two cuts. And now I will repeat the process one more time, putting two cuts on in that direction too. Control R. Move your mouse here to see the selection. Use the mouse wheel to create two lines. Press on the S button on your keyboard. And then now we need not to press the Z button for the green axis. Now we need to scale this across the red line, which I think is probably going to be the X axis. So S, X, it doesn't work because I haven't clicked and confirmed. So let's confirm first. Now on S and X button, and we should have approximately same distance from the left and right for the legs to start to materialize. Ladies and gentlemen, I press the button to confirm on the mouse, left button. We now have our tabletop almost ready, but without the legs. And at this point, we will have to introduce a new functionality again. The last functionality, I believe, for this little tutorial here. We want to take these little corners here and create table legs out of those. And to do so, we need to still be in edit mode because we are now working with specific parts of the object and not the whole object as a whole. But within the edit mode, you have three different sub modes. And they are here. This is the mode to select a face. This is a mode to select an edge. And this is to select a little dot or a little corner somewhere. So let's quickly have a look at those. These are these little dots on the corners that you can select in this sub mode. These are the little edges that you can select in this sub mode. But we want to work with these faces here, right? Because we want to create table legs. So what we are going to do is to select all of these four legs at the same time and work with those. But before we do that, well, actually, let's do this real quick. I'm clicking here on this face to select it. I'm holding Shift on the keyboard. While holding it, I'm also clicking on this face, and on this face. So we have a multiple selection for all of these four faces. And now what I will do is I will change the view a little bit by clicking on the mouse wheel, holding onto it and moving the mouse to have a slightly different angle, and you will see why. Because now that we have these four faces selected, if I click on the letter E for England, and if I select the blue axis with the letter Y, I believe, we might even, yeah. And if I move the mouse upward, we have legs that suddenly grow out of the tabletop, which is exactly what we want. So let's just approximately select something that makes sense and then confirm by clicking on the left mouse button. Boom. I will change the view once again by holding the scrolling wheel, moving the mouse. I think we have a nicely looking table right now. And there is one thing that I would consider doing right now is to actually move it a little bit further up, because currently it looks like it's under that cross. I would like to have it further up for exporting, but it wouldn't matter. We could just use it like that. So I'm clicking on the button 1 on the numbers tab on the keyboard to change the view. I could also press 3. And what I will do now, and I think we haven't used that functionality until now, so this should be the last one, not the previous one, the letter G. The letter G on the keyboard, if you click on it, press on it, and then we will be able to move the object to a different location on this grid. But before using the mouse, we again want to define the axis along which we want to move it, and that's the blue line. And I think the blue line is the y-axis. It is. I pressed on the Y button on the keyboard now, and now I'm moving the mouse. What's going on there? Something is not working out right. It's still in a different mode here. Let's click on the escape button. I think what happened is that it was still in the extrusion mode. Let's try this again. I've selected everything, pressing on E for extrude. Sorry, not for E for extrude. Now I'm getting lost. Pressing on G to move this whole table upward along the y-axis. That's not what I was expecting. Okay, let's press the escape button to return to the previous state. So once again, we have a similar problem that we had before. I had selected this table, but once we changed the perspective, we realized that we didn't select the whole table. In order to ensure that we select the whole table, we can either press the letter A and select everything, or we make life easy for ourselves. I think we can also just switch over to the object mode, because now we are not working with any sides, not with any faces or edges or dots. We're working with the whole object. We just want to move it a little bit further up before saving. So I've switched over to the object mode. I'm clicking on the button 1 on the keyboard, on the right side of the keyboard, to change the view to see where it is positioned across this horizontal line. This is level 0. This is the floor. So right now it's kind of under the floor. I don't want that. So now that we have the object mode on and the object selected, if I click again on the letter G, select the blue line axis, which is letter Y, I move the mouse, the whole object moves, and around here I will release it by clicking the left mouse button. Boom. And now we have a completed table, ladies and gentlemen. All right. I believe all of you guys may have seen the previous video on how to export this object, but let's just quickly do this together. File, export, GLTF2. We will name it table, and I will save it on the desktop. Let's quickly check. We do not select anything here because we want to export everything that we see in the scene. And Everything else looks okay. Export. So now, in theory, we should be able to go back into our Decentraland builder tool and import that newly created GLB file into Decentraland and place our table into the scene. And this particular task I will cover just in the next video, as we are almost coming to 30 minutes recording here. I think it will be good to have that video covered separately, that topic covered separately. I hope this was useful to you guys. I know this was very fundamental for many of you, but I think it was really important to go through a very basic example specifically related to Decentraland, and also showing you all the mistakes that will usually happen for people starting out with Blender. I think we've covered some of the key mistakes and the key shortcuts on the keyboard. I think with this knowledge, you can actually start building very cool, very simple objects for Decentraland. And I think one other video which will need to exist is how to apply color and material to this table. But I think we will do that as one of the subsequent videos. For now, I just want to make sure we can create them, we can import and position them in the builder tool inside Decentraland, and then we'll cover the topic of materials, textures, colors, and so forth. Just for us to be able to create stuff, basic stuff. All right, guys, thank you, and I see you in the next video.